Hello, and welcome to Character Class. Today, today I'd like to get back into making videos for this series of mine by talking about metagaming and why it isn't real and can't hurt you. Now, that's a big that's a big statement to make. So let's take a step back and look at what metagaming is. Now, I brought up a nice definition here from Wikipedia, so you know it's completely accurate, but it's good enough. Metagaming is a term used in role playing games which describes a player's use of real life knowledge concerning the state of the game to determine their character's actions when said character has no relevant knowledge or awareness under the circumstances. That is basically what metagaming is. It's when you, for example, if your character has never encountered a troll in a game of D&D and yet you have your character fight a troll because you, the player, have encountered trolls in previous games and thus you know their weaknesses, so your character is automatically going to want to use their weaknesses against these trolls to make the fight easier. That is considered metagaming. Now, what I mean by metagaming isn't real and can't hurt you is that really, when you boil it down, when you really get down to the nitty gritty of all of the arguments against metagaming, that it's like you're using information outside of the game. You're not doing what your character would do. You're cheating. I've heard that before, and to be fair, uh, I may have mentioned metagaming in a video on this channel, and being a little bit critical of it back then. I know I have been critical of metagaming long ago before I even started making videos for YouTube. I was. But I have grown over the years and I have come to the conclusion that right now, in my personal life, in my as a game master, that metagaming is not actually a thing. It is a concept we have come up with to basically wrap around the idea that the game masters, we as the game masters, do not have the level of control that we wish we did. Now, take a moment and refrain from immediately banging at the keyboard in response to this. Uh, and really think about what I'm saying here. We as game masters run everything except the other player characters. We run the world, the NPCs, the story. We create so much, and we're in control of so much. But we are not in control of the players or their characters. This is this is where the people in the game get their agency because they are controlling their characters. And when we as game masters tell a player that they're metagaming, that they shouldn't be doing that this is not something their character would know, we are trying to exert our control over them. And that's not good. Now, there's a very easy way that all of this becomes a non issue, and that is with Session Zero. Session Zero is something that I have not always used in my time running games, but it is something that I have found out about recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years, something like that. I've got onto the idea of a Session Zero and begun including it, where it's a full session that would normally have gameplay, where characters get created and me as a DM or storyteller or game master talk to my players and find out what they want out of the game, what they're looking for, the the sorts of genres they wish to play, the lines and veils that they do not wish to be crossed, or would rather have stuff happen off screen. Um, but it's also a place where I put forth what I am looking for out of the game. And we have a conversation and we come to an agreement before a game even begins. And this is exactly the sort of time when you can discuss the level of control that you are comfortable with. Now, in order to know what level of control you're comfortable with, you need to do some soul searching and figure things out. Maybe even have conversations with your friends about it. And it's good to find out the level of control that your players would like to have in the game. Um, and you talk this over and you work things out. Like, are you okay with your players using out of game information in character? Is that something you're okay with? And if you talk with them about it and be like, I don't want you doing this, I want this to be a realistic game, I want your characters to have their own personalities. Like, if you do all this and you come to an agreement ahead of time, then metagaming doesn't become an issue because you've already agreed on that level of control. You see what I mean? Metagaming is because, like, I'm firmly believe it has come to use in the gaming parlance because nobody has this conversation, or a lot of people don't and haven't, and they might now. Maybe I might help some people out with this. Like, have that conversation as to what level of control you're comfortable with. Now, me, I am comfortable letting my players do a lot of things. I'm running two uh, two campaigns in a homebrew world of mine that is very much like D&D fantasy stuff. We're using D&D 5e, and I have allowed my players to do stuff that is not inherently stated in the rules. Uh, they are free to use any information they want because as long as they can, give me a reasonable explanation as to why their character knows it. And sometimes it's simply just like, you are living in this world. It is extremely conceivable that at some point in your life, for an example, you may have heard that trolls are vulnerable to fire. Because it's the sort of thing like weaknesses of monsters that these stories get passed around. It's conceivable you've heard of this. One of my players is playing an artificer with an alchemy bent to it, and his character has spells which he has chosen to flavor as using various potions and or alcoholic drinks with how he does it. And it is very silly, but I am 100% here for it, and it makes the game enjoyable for everybody. Everybody has a good time, and that's the key thing, making sure your players are having a good time. And if you're criticizing them for metagaming, you are putting a damper on things. Now, to to come back just a little bit, I understand that in some people's games they want to have a certain thematic aesthetic to things. They want to have a certain feeling coming along with the game, and some of that feeling, especially in games that are horror based, can be a feeling of dread, a feeling of powerlessness. And that's okay. These games are perfectly fine for that. But the thing is, this is exactly the sort of thing that you talk about with your players in session zero. You get them on board, and so they know what to expect going into it. They know that they are going to be powerless in a lot of situations, that perhaps combat is not something that they should immediately jump into because the system itself is unforgiving when it comes to combat. So you have to, once you are all on the same page, once everybody is on the same page, it takes a lot of the issue surrounding metagaming and makes it a non-issue. But sometimes it doesn't, and in those times, it can be slightly tricky because if everybody has agreed to something and then someone then goes against it, well, you deal with that as necessary. You take them aside, have a conversation. Uh, you try and get them back on that same page and be like, we agreed on this. And if they still keep doing it, then maybe they're not right for your gaming group. Sometimes there has to be a point, and it's always a hard thing to figure out when to make that call. But sometimes you have to make that call and be like, uh, "I'm sorry, please leave." Sometimes you have to, because sometimes not everybody will gel together. Not everybody will work together. Now, the fun part, the fun part about this is that once everybody is on the same page, once everybody knows what to expect and is going into this, once your players know that you're not going to, bring the hammer down on them just because they do something that is that they think is fine but might not be, like, using uh, a fire weakness against a troll, even though your character couldn't have known about it. Uh, if you if one of your players does this and you don't bring that hammer down on them, and you have a cool battle, cool combat, and your player characters have come in and saved the day and defeated the evil trolls, it becomes a very cool combat, something that is memorable, something that they will remember and have positive feelings towards, rather than them having done it and you being like, no, you can't do that. You can't possibly know that. You see, then you've basically chastised them for trying to play the game, and it comes back to that level of control. How much control do you want as a game master over your players? How much control are you willing to let go of to allow them to do things? I have found the less overall control you have over the game, the more interesting the game becomes, the more exciting for me as a game master the game becomes, because then I don't know what's coming next. I have to think on my feet. I have to improv. And some people have trouble improving. That's understandable and that's okay. This is where the session zero discussion of control over the game is something I think should be included. I've rambled on here quite enough. Uh, so I'm just going to kind of leave it there, please. Leave me some comments. Let me think on what you think about metagaming and if it is real. I think it isn't. I think it is simply a label that we have placed on our desire to wield control in the game. Because once you take away that control, once you have removed the need for it, then the actions of players in or out of character ceases to become an issue. At least it has for me. But please leave me those comments below in the comment section. Get some, engagement going on. And until next time, you all stay safe, keep hydrating, and keep rolling those dice. I'll see you next time.